It killed instantly. It killed a man for reaching out to steady it. It struck down 70 more for looking inside it. It leveled the walls of a fortified city, without a single soldier laying a hand on them. And when it was captured by an enemy nation, it filled their cities with tumors and plague, until they begged to give it back. We were told the Ark of the Covenant was a golden box, a container for 2 stone tablets, a holy relic. But that is not what the text describes. The text describes a device, something that radiated power, killed on contact, and was carried into war like a weapon. And then, without a single word of explanation, it vanished from history. This is what the Bible actually says it did. Ask most people what the Ark of the Covenant was, and you'll hear the same answer. A wooden chest, covered in gold, that held the 10 Commandments. The Sunday school version, a sacred container, and technically, that's true. The book of Exodus says it held the stone tablets Moses carried down from Sinai. Later traditions add a jar of manna and the staff of Aaron, but a container is for storage. The ark was never treated like storage. It was treated like something alive, something dangerous. The priests who handled it followed safety procedures so strict that breaking them meant death. It had to be wrapped in layers before it could be moved. No one was allowed to touch it directly, not even the men assigned to carry it. It was kept in the most sealed, most isolated chamber of the temple, behind a heavy veil. And only one man was allowed to enter that room, once a year, and only after days of preparation. That is not how you treat a jewelry box. That is how you handle something that can kill you. So the real question was never what the ark contained. The real question is, what was the ark, and why was everyone who came near it so afraid? The first clue is in the blueprint. In the book of Exodus, chapter 25, God doesn't ask for the ark to be built. He dictates it. Precise measurements, exact materials, a specification sheet, thousands of years before engineering existed. The core is acacia wood, a dense, resilient desert hardwood, but the wood is only the skeleton. It is overlaid, inside and out, with pure gold. Sit with that construction for a moment. A non-conductive material, wood, sealed between 2 layers of a conductive material, gold, inside and outside. On top rests a solid gold lid the text calls the mercy seat, and rising from that lid, 2 golden figures called cherubim, their wings stretched toward each other until they almost touch, and God tells Moses that he will speak from the space between those 2 wings, from the gap, from the charged air between 2 points of gold. Now, no one is claiming Bronze Age desert tribesmen built a machine. But the description, 2 conductive layers separated by an insulator, topped by 2 metal points facing one another, has made more than one engineer stop and stare. Because that is, loosely, the description of a capacitor, a device built to store energy. And then there are the rules, 4 gold rings, 2 poles of gold-covered acacia slid permanently through those rings. And one command that sounds strange until you understand what it was protecting against. The poles must never be removed. Ever. The ark was never to be carried by hand. Only ever by the poles. Why? The answer arrives in the most chilling way the Bible knows how to deliver it. Years later, King David is moving the ark on an ox cart. The oxen stumble, and a man named Uzzah, doing the most natural, most human thing imaginable, reaches out his hand to steady it, to stop the sacred object from tipping into the dirt. He never finishes the motion. The text says he was struck down, and he died there, in that instant beside the ark, for touching it. Read that without the religious framing for 1 second. A man puts his bare hand on the golden object, and he is dead before he hits the ground. David was so shaken, so frightened, that he refused to bring the ark another step. He left it at the house of a man named Obed-Edom for 3 months, as if it were radioactive. A box that holds tablets does not do this. But here is the part that should stop you cold. Uzzah was not an enemy. He was not a thief. He was a believer. He was trying to help, and it did not matter. The ark did not distinguish between friend and foe. It only reacted to contact, which raises a far darker question. If it killed the people who served it, what did it do to the people it was aimed at? But here's what they don't teach you in church. For most of its early history, the ark had no temple at all, because in the beginning, it wasn't the centerpiece of worship. It was the front line of Israel's army. They didn't pray to it from a safe distance. They carried it into battle. And what happened on those battlefields had nothing to do with faith. It had to do with firepower. Start with the most famous battle in the Bible, Jericho, a walled city, fortified, by the standards of its age impossible to take, and the Israelite army has no siege engines, no catapults, no battering rams. What they have is the ark, and the instructions are bizarre. For 6 days they carry the ark around the city walls, once each day, in silence. 7 priests march ahead of it, sounding horns. On the 7th day, they circle the city 7 times. Then the horns blast together, the people shout, and the text says the walls fell down flat, not breached, not climbed, flat. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as legend. Then archaeologists excavated the site of ancient Jericho. And at the base of the old city, they found a wall that had collapsed, outward and downward, falling flat in a way that would have let attackers walk straight up over the rubble. The exact pattern the text describes. Skeptics say earthquake. Maybe. But hold that thought. Because the ark's body count was just getting started. In a later battle, Israel loses, and the unthinkable happens. The Philistines capture the ark and haul it home like a trophy. They set it inside the temple of their own god, Dagon, in the city of Ashdod. The next morning, the statue of Dagon has fallen on its face before the ark. They stand it back up. The morning after that, the statue is on the ground again. This time its head and its hands are broken off, and then the people begin to get sick. The text describes an outbreak of tumors, swellings, spreading through the population. And wherever the Philistines move the ark, the affliction moves with it. Ashdod sends it on to Gath. The plague erupts in Gath. They send it to Ekron. And the people of Ekron panic before it even arrives, crying out that it has come to kill them all. Modern readers have noticed something disturbing buried in the details. Tumors, a fast-spreading sickness, and, in the very same account, a sudden infestation of mice. Swellings, plus rodents, plus a rapidly moving plague. To more than one researcher, that reads less like a curse and more like a textbook description of the bubonic plague 3,000 years before anyone understood what it was. After 7 months of suffering, the Philistines begged to send the ark back, and their own priests warned them, do not send it back empty. They craft offerings, 5 golden tumors, 5 golden mice, shaped like the very things that were killing them. And they load them onto a cart beside the ark, hoping to appease whatever was inside. The ark goes home, but the dying still isn't over. The cart arrives at an Israelite town called Beth Shemesh. The people are overjoyed to have it back. Some of them lift the lid. They look inside, and 70 men drop dead where they stand, their own people, their own God. It made no difference. They looked into the ark and they died. Now put the whole pattern together. A man who touches it dies. 70 men who look inside it die. An enemy nation that captures it is ravaged by tumors and rodents and a creeping death they cannot outrun. A stone idol, shadow shattered overnight. The walls of a fortress falling flat. Every single account points in the same direction. This was not a passive relic. It was active. Dangerous. Lethal. The people who lived alongside it knew exactly what it was capable of. That is why the rules existed. That is why no one touched it. The only thing they did not know was what it actually was. Here is where it gets stranger. Because the Ark is not nearly as unique as we have been led to believe. Travel back to Egypt, the very civilization the Israelites had just escaped. In the tomb of Tutankhamun, archaeologists found sacred chests, covered in gold, carried on poles threaded through rings on their sides, topped with the figure of a winged goddess, her arms outstretched in protection. The resemblance to the Ark is not vague, it is specific. The same shape, the same gold, the same carrying poles. The same protective winged figures spreading over the top. The Egyptians called these objects sacred barks. They believed the gods themselves traveled inside them. They were carried in procession by priests who were forbidden to touch them directly, shielded from ordinary people. Kept in the darkest inner chamber of the temple. Stop and notice what just happened. The exact same handling protocol. The exact same design language. In a culture that worshipped completely different gods. And it does not stop with Egypt. Across the ancient world, the pattern repeats. Cultures separated by oceans and centuries, who never once met, all circling the same idea, a portable container of divine power, too dangerous for ordinary hands, carried on poles, guarded by a priestly class, and capable of striking down anyone who came too close. So ask the obvious question. How does the same impossibly specific object, a gold box, carrying poles, winged guardians, deadly to the touch, appear in civilization after civilization that had no contact with each other? Mainstream history has an answer. Cultural diffusion. Ideas spread along trade routes. The Israelites had lived in Egypt for generations, so they borrowed the form, and that is reasonable. The design could be copied, but copying explains the shape, does not explain the behavior. You can copy a golden box. You cannot copy the fact that touching it kills you. And that is the thread running through every one of these accounts. Not just the form, but the danger. The consistent, cross-cultural insistence that these objects were not symbols, that they did something, that getting close had a cost. Then there is the way Israel actually used it. They did not lock it away as a holy secret. In the earliest period, they carried it at the very head of their army. It went out in front of the soldiers. When it was lifted to move, Moses would cry out, "Rise up, and let your enemies be scattered." It was a battlefield instrument. The single most powerful asset a Bronze Age nation could possess. And every army that has ever held a weapon that decisive eventually faces the same two outcomes. Either someone stronger comes to take it, or you hide it before they can, which brings us to the strangest fact of all. An object this powerful, this feared, this central to an entire people, should be the most carefully documented relic in human history. We should know exactly where it ended up. Instead, it simply stops. There is no account of its destruction. No record of its capture in the final fall of Jerusalem. No enemy parading it as a trophy. The most dangerous object in the ancient world is described in detail for centuries, and then the text falls completely silent. It is not destroyed. It is not stolen. It disappears. So where did it go? The trail goes cold in the 6th century before Christ. In the year 586 BC, the Babylonian Empire, under King Nebuchadnezzar, lays siege to Jerusalem, breaks through, and burns Solomon's temple to the ground. They loot everything. And here is the detail almost no one notices. The Babylonians kept records. The Bible itself preserves an inventory of what they carried back to Babylon: the gold basins, the silver dishes, the bronze pillars, the smaller furnishings of the temple, all of it catalogued item by item. The Ark is not on the list, the single most valuable, most sacred object in the entire temple, absent from the record of the plunder. So either the greatest trophy in the ancient Near East went completely unmentioned, or it was already gone before the Babylonians ever arrived. That absence has fueled three serious theories. The first comes from an ancient text, In the second book of Maccabees, the prophet Jeremiah, warned of the coming destruction, takes the ark, carries it up a mountain, hides it inside a cave, and seals the entrance. When his companions try to mark the trail, he stops them. The location, the text says, will stay unknown until gathers his people again. If that account is true, the ark was deliberately hidden by a prophet before the city ever fell. The second theory keeps it much closer to home. Beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem lies a labyrinth of ancient tunnels and sealed chambers, some reaching back to the first temple. A long-standing tradition holds that the ark was lowered into a hidden vault deep beneath the temple floor, and that it still rests there, directly under the most contested, most politically locked piece of ground on earth, where no excavation is permitted. And the third theory leads somewhere no one expects. Ethiopia. In the city of Axum stands a church, the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. And the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims, openly, and to this very day, that the true Ark of the Covenant rests inside it. It is guarded by a single monk, the guardian, chosen for life. He can never leave the chapel grounds, and he alone is permitted to lay eyes on it. When he dies, he names his successor with his final breath. No one else may see it, not scholars, not priests, not kings. Is it really there? No outsider has ever been allowed to verify it. And the Ethiopians hold a detailed tradition explaining how it arrived, carried out of Jerusalem generations before the Babylonians ever came. 3 theories: a sealed cave, a hidden vault, a guarded chapel. They cannot all be true. But notice what every single one of them has in common. In all 3, the ark was not lost, it was hidden, deliberately, by people who knew exactly what it was, and exactly what it could do. So strip away the centuries of Sunday school imagery, and look at what the text actually leaves us with. An object built to an exact specification. Conductive metal, layered over an insulating core, topped by 2 facing points and a gap its own makers were warned never to approach carelessly. An object that killed a man for steadying it. That killed 70 more for looking inside it. That collapsed the walls of a fortress. That filled an entire enemy nation with plague. That was carried into war at the head of an army, handled with protocols we would recognize today as containment. And that, when the end finally came, was not captured, was not destroyed, but was hidden so thoroughly that 3,000 years later, we are still arguing about where it lies. You do not hide a religious symbol that carefully. You hide a weapon. Maybe it was exactly what tradition says, the seed of God's presence on earth. Maybe it was something the ancients could build, but could not explain, and so they described it in the only language they had. Maybe the truth is stranger than either one. But the one thing the evidence will not let you believe is the comfortable version, that it was just a box. The people who lived with it were terrified of it. And they were terrified for a reason. And the ark is only the beginning. Because it was not the only object in the Bible described as a weapon. There was a staff that turned rivers to blood and swallowed armies whole. A sword kept hidden behind the holy garments. Objects of power, scattered all through the text that history has done its best to forget. And we are going to find every single one of them. If this rearranged something you thought you understood, subscribe, because this channel exists to follow the evidence the textbooks redacted. The more they redacted, the more you'll know. So here is the question I'll leave you with. If the ark really is still out there, sealed in one of those 3 places, who is making sure it stays hidden? And what are they afraid would happen if it did?